Hello, my name is Keith Anthony and I'm a hypnotist, and the reason I'm making this recording is because some friends of mine have asked for me to tell them about my near-death experience, and so I thought I'd make a video. And they asked me a couple of weeks ago, but I thought I'd delay it until the 7th of April because the 7th of April coincides with the 37th anniversary of an accident that caused my near-death experience. That accident happened on the 7th of April 1978 when I was just 22 years old. And the accident occurred when I was riding pillion on a friend's motorcycle, and he was driving along the Godstone Road in a town called Whiteleaf, which is in Surrey, UK. And we were driving along that road. It was a long left-hand bend, and when we were driving along that bend we came to a place where there was a bar, or a pub as we call them in England, and there was a car pulling out of the car park of that bar, driven by somebody who was intoxicated. He was drunk, he shouldn't have been driving. He was not licensed to drive a car, so he shouldn't have been driving a car at all. And the car itself was in an unroadworthy condition, and he drove up the wrong side of the road straight into us, and I was launched over the back of my friend because he was a hefty lad. He weighed about 25 stone, and he was not injured, but I was launched over his back, and reports vary. Some people say I went 100 yards or 100 meters through the air, and I landed on my head, unfortunately, and smashed my crash helmet open. And I can't remember the accident itself. I can only remember just before the impact when we hit the car, and apparently the motorcycle was underneath the car. All four wheels of the car were raised off of the ground, and I was laying in the gutter. I can't remember the impact. I can't remember flying through the air. All I can remember of the accident was the aftermath when I was laying in the curb, and I can remember being in terrible agony. I can remember clearly laying in the gutter in so much pain with my head. It felt like my head was exploding, and I can remember the strangeness of the situation, that I was laying there thinking coherently that I was screaming in pain. I was screaming my head off like a baby, but at the same time I was thinking that I needed to remain calm and stop screaming because I was an adult, a grown-up man and a motorcyclist, and we just didn't do that kind of thing. But I just couldn't stop myself screaming because I was in so much pain. And after a time everything went black, and I assumed that I descended into a coma, and things started to get very strange then. And when I was in coma, I found myself after a time going along a tunnel of light. And when I was going along that tunnel of light, there were some entities. I can only call them entities. It's hard to describe what they were. It was like they were communicating with me telepathically, giving me instructions and warning me to stay on the path, not to deviate to the left or the right, because that would be a terrible thing for me to do. And so they were telling me to go along the light, go to the light. So I could see this pinpoint of light in the distance. So I was travelling along this tunnel, and I can't tell you whether I was walking or floating. It was all very surreal and dreamlike, and I was going along the tunnel. The thing I can remember that was very strange was that there was no concept of time in this place. Everything seemed to happen all at once, and the word is ineffable. It's very hard to describe what was going on, because everything seemed to happen at once. So it's very confusing. It's very hard to describe. But I was travelling somehow along this tunnel. But while I was going along the tunnel, I was very much aware that to the left and the right, there was a void, a complete darkness. That there was, it was, although I say dark, it was less than darkness. There was not, it was a complete emptiness. You can't even call it darkness. But there seemed to be spirits or voices, I can't say what it was, calling to me from this darkness, trying to persuade me to turn and go into the darkness with them. And they were voices of anguish, voices of torment, trying to call to me for help and trying to persuade me to go in and help them to come out. And I wanted to go in to help those poor voices or whatever they were, but I stayed on the track, and I kept going straight towards the light. And eventually I came into a place where I was just illuminated by light. The light was everywhere, surrounding me. Everywhere you looked, it was just a wall of light. Although I say wall, it was an all-consuming light. It was very strange. And there was what I will describe as, because I'm a Christian, I would say it was, let's say, Jesus. It was an entity in our long, I'm going to say white, but it was a very bright robe, very intense robe, who was guiding me. And he took me into a room which had wood panelling. I remember thinking that was very strange, because I was in what I would describe as a very spiritual place, a very, let's call it, godly place. And I was thinking, why did this place have wood panelling? I was thinking that wood panelling had no place in up there. I couldn't see the point of the wood panelling. But I was in a room that had wood panelling. It was a little bit like a courtroom. It had wood panelling halfway up the walls, and the rest of the walls and the ceiling were intense white, very bright. It was so bright that if you looked at it, it would almost burn your eyes. And it wasn't a very big room. It was perhaps the size of this room that I'm in here, which is about 13 feet square. And in that room there was a fluted pillar of about 1 foot diameter, and that had a lectern on it. And on top of the lectern was a very thick book, very wide, and not unlike a very ornate Bible with very thick covers on it, and the pages were curved like that, and the pages had writing on them. And this book was the book of life, the book of my life. The story of my entire life was in that book, and this book was my life review. And everybody has a life review when you go to this place. And I was shown my entire life, but although it was written in the book, I didn't read the book. It was shown to me in a panoramic view, as if it was a movie, and I saw my entire life that was written in the book, but I saw it as if in a movie. And the thing that is very noticeable in this place, as I said earlier on, there is no time. Time is infinite when you go to this place. So everything that was happening in my life from the beginning up to the present was shown to me, but I was shown everything from a third party point of view. So everything that I'd done, everything that I'd experienced, I could see from the point of view of everybody that I'd interacted with. So if I'd done something good to you, then I would get all those good feelings from the person that I'd done the good to. And if I'd done something nasty to somebody, then I would get the nasty feelings, and I would feel the way the person felt that I'd been nasty to. So it's very much, you get the feeling of judgment, but you're judging yourself. You don't have anybody judging you. You very much feel like you're judging yourself, because you feel the emotions of all the people that you have ever harmed, and you feel the emotions of all the people that you've ever done any good to, and it is very strange. But the thing I've found that was very strange, and I've noticed that I've read the accounts of other people that had near-death experiences, and I don't think I've ever read an account of anyone else's near-death experience which is quite like this, because with my life review I was shown not only my life events from the beginning to the present, but they showed me the future as well. Now that's not to say that I can predict the future for you now, because I don't know what the future is now, but when I was there I can remember that they showed me future events as well, which I've not been allowed to bring back with me, but I can remember that they showed me into the future of my life as well, and so they showed me exactly where I was going to be going in the future, and I always remember that. And when they'd finished showing me my life review, there was a point in that room where they led me to a door in the wall, and it was a big wooden door, a very ornate door, and they told me to open the door and go through. Now I'd never been in a place like this before, and I wasn't sure what was going on. It was all very strange, and I asked them, what's through the door? And they said, well, you have to go through the door and you'll find out. And I said, well, you tell me what's beyond the door and I will go through. And they said, well, you just go through the door and you'll find out. And I argued with them, and I said, well, I'm not going to go through the door because I don't know what's on the other side, and I didn't trust them. And they said, well, you have to trust us. I said, why? And I was arguing with them, and they were very shocked that I was arguing with them, because they said everybody goes through the door, that's the way it is, that's the way it's always been. And they were very shocked that I was arguing with them, because that's the kind of a person I am, and I didn't know where I was. So I was being sensible. I didn't know there could be a bottomless pit on the other side, and so I argued with them, and I don't know what happened, because then the scene completely changed to a completely different picture altogether. And I have to remind you what I'm saying, that there's no concept of time there, so lots of different scenes were seemingly happening all at the same time, so it's very confusing. Because another scene that I saw, I was in another area, let's call it another area, where I met lots of people who were my ancestors, my family who've died and gone up to heaven, and they all came to greet me, and that was wonderful to meet my grandparents, my aunties and uncles and other relatives who've died. And I met a lot of relatives that I haven't known, because they're very old relatives, and my grandparents, my great-grandparents and my great-great-grandparents and great aunties and great uncles who died before I was born, and I met all of those. And I found it very strange too that I met the spirits of people who are still alive, and I found that was a shock to me. And what that taught me was that we are all spirit bodies having a human experience, because although we're all down here with our physical bodies, we have a spirit body, and our spirit bodies are all in heaven, So although I'm here with a physical body, my spirit body is actually still in heaven. We just have the illusion that we are here on earth. And I've always been struck by that, and I find that a very special part of my journey into, let's call it heaven, for want of a better word. So I've always been struck by the fact that I met the spirits of people who are still alive. And I find it very shocking that when I read other people's near-death experiences, nobody has ever written about that in their accounts. I find that very strange. But it was a very beautiful place. One of the things I really did like was the overall feeling that was everywhere. There was so much love up there. The love was everywhere. Everybody loved me. And the feeling, the whole place was just filled with this feeling of love that was just everywhere. The whole place, it was as if it was just the whole place fueled by love. The whole place was run on love. It was marvelous. And I can't describe it to you because I don't have the words to describe. I don't have the vocabulary. There are no words that describe it to you. I could say that there were beautiful flowers with very intense colours and that kind of thing, and that would go part way, but the flowers the flowers I couldn't describe to you the way the flowers looked. They are flowers that are beyond description. They defy description. They are to call them flowers is way short of the mark. You cannot describe the kind of flowers that would be there. It's just too fantastic to describe. So the people that describe flowers that they've seen up there, I'm wondering where they're coming from, because it's too fantastic. It defies description, and I don't understand how people write books about what they've seen, because for me, I've never written a book because it's beyond description. But as I was saying, I met the spirits of all my ancestors, and both family and neighbours who died, and everybody was up there, and that was wonderful, and I never forget that. What happened? Why am I here? Well, the reason I'm here is because they showed me many things up there, all those people. I had my life review, but there came a point eventually where I'd seen all those people, I'd had my life review, I'd met Jesus, I actually saw God. When I say I saw God, it was more accurate to say I was in the presence of God. I knew I was in the presence of God. It communicated with me telepathically, but to say it was like standing in front of a wall would be an understatement, because it's the biggest wall. I say saw, you can't see it. There was too big of a wall to see it, because it was huge beyond description, and it was brilliant white, and I was afraid to look at it to begin with, because you hear these stories that if you look into the face of God you'll be blinded. But I looked. I was afraid to look at first, but then I turned my eyes and I looked at it, and it was really bright, and I wasn't blinded, and it just burned an impression into my heart that I bring back with me to this day. And eventually I realized that I was in paradise, and it was a wonderful place. But after a while Jesus had a chat with me, and he gave me a choice. He said that I could stay if I wanted to, but he also showed me the opportunities I had back down here, and he showed me that there were people down here who needed me. and there were things that I could do down here. There are changes that I could make down here. And he gave me the choice that I could stay up there in what was truly paradise, or I could come back. And I made the choice to come back, because I couldn't stay up there in paradise, which would have been wonderful. But to be in paradise, knowing that I could make changes down here, and I just couldn't stay in paradise, because I would be racked with guilt knowing that I was in paradise when there were people down here who needed me, and knowing that there were people down here who could be influenced by me, knowing what I know now, because since I've been here I've saved several lives, I've delivered a baby, I've helped crippled people walk, I've done a lot of marvellous things. I do a regular radio show once a week. When I get onto that show, I do hypnosis over the radio. I don't even know who's listening, but I know that we get feedback from that show, and people have been influenced and changed, and that's a marvellous thing. If I'd stayed in paradise, none of those people would have been helped. So I knew I had to come back. But when I was told I had the choice, they made it very clear to me that if I came back it wouldn't be easy. And it wasn't easy, because when I came back in a coma. I was diagnosed as being a cabbage. I was clinically dead. There was no activity on the brain monitor. However, it was when I came back that the next strange episode started, because I found myself standing amongst the doctors, looking down at my own lifeless body on the bed. And I was trying to communicate with the doctors, and there were students there as well, and they were all standing around the bed with their arms folded, just looking at me, and it seemed to me they were just standing waiting for me to die. They weren't giving me any treatment, and I was standing there looking at my body, wondering why it was they weren't doing anything to help me. My body was just laying there lifeless, and it seemed to me that I had superior knowledge of medicine that was beyond anything that I have now. I've lost that knowledge. So at that time I was obviously out of body still connected with my friends in heaven, and still had superior knowledge that these doctors didn't seem to have. And I was frustrated. I was trying to shout at them, but they didn't seem to be able to hear me. I was trying to communicate with them. I was trying to talk to them telepathically, but they didn't seem to be able to hear. And they just didn't seem to be doing anything for me. And at this time, this was in what was then Mayday Hospital. They've changed the name of the hospital now to Croydon University Hospital. And they kept me there for 3 days on the bed without treating me, and eventually they sent me to Atkinson Morley Hospital in an ambulance. And when they got me to Atkinson Morley Hospital, I'd then been in a coma for 3 days, and then they started to treat me more seriously, and eventually I came out of the coma. But I remember standing at my bedside looking at myself, and I can't remember standing in Atkinson Morley Hospital. So that episode ended at that point, and I must have gone back into my body, because after that the next thing that I can remember is going through an extended period where I was in a kind of trance, where it's very hard to describe. I was completely without cognitive thought. It was just like a kind of silence. I was just floating. There was no thought in my head at all. I could not hear anything. I could not feel anything. I was just like I was in a kind of limbo, like I was waiting for some. It was as if I was waiting for somebody to plug me in, and I don't know how long that went on for, and I was, I'm told, in a coma for some time, but I'm not sure that I actually was in a coma. I think I was in a locked-in state, and I just couldn't communicate. But that's the way I was, and I was laying in the bed there until eventually I started to get my awareness back. And I know that I got my awareness back because I started to sense pain, intense pain in my head. The worst pain you can imagine. I can't describe how much pain that was because I'd had a head injury, and it was really painful right across the whole of my head and down into my neck. Very intense pain, and I couldn't communicate. I couldn't talk. I couldn't express myself in any way. I couldn't move. I couldn't let anybody know that I was in pain, and my eyes were open because I was staring at the ceiling, and there were tiles on the ceiling, but I didn't know they were tiles, and there were people standing around me, but I didn't know they were people because I got complete profound amnesia, and so they were just things moving, but I had no awareness that there were things moving, and so life was a bit strange at first, but gradually things began to take shape. And in actual fact, the thing that triggered me was I was just laying there in a state of, I don't know, would stasis be the word? I'm not sure, but I was just staring up at the ceiling for the longest time. And I don't think anybody was aware that I was awake. And strange thing happened. I was just staring up at the ceiling as if I was in a waiting room, just waiting for something to trigger me, and I was not aware of anything at all. It was as if my mind was searching for something to make sense of. And then eventually, I don't know how long it had been, but eventually, very strange, and this might make you laugh, but eventually this little black dot appeared on the ceiling among the tiles that I didn't know at the time, but you will know it as a spider, walked across the ceiling, just coming across my vision from the right to the left. Tiny spider with 8 legs, of course. I didn't know it was a spider because I had complete amnesia, and it just walked across my line of vision, and that caught my attention, and I thought, what was that? And my mind managed to see it and recorded it, and I traced that back like it was a video, and I just kept running backwards and forwards in my mind and registering the movement of that thing, and that triggered my mind and booted it back up, and I kept running it backwards and forwards in my mind. And then I began to notice the edges of the tiles and the corners of the tiles, and then my mind started to kick back in very, very quickly, and so I started to get the concept of numbers, because there were 4 corners on the tiles and there were 4 edges on the tiles. Then I started to notice the spots that were on the tiles, specks of dirt and stuff, because the hospital wasn't very clean. And then my field of vision began to expand, and I couldn't move because I was paralyzed, but that broadened my awareness, and then I began to notice the things that were moving around me. That there were people. I didn't know there were people, but my awareness started to kick back in, and although I didn't know there were people, they started to register in my mind, and then my field of vision started to increase, and I gradually started to come back, but I couldn't move. because I was paralyzed. And I don't know how long that period was, but the thing that I will never forget was the pain, because I was in this intense pain and I couldn't move. I couldn't rub my head or anything like that. There was nothing I could do about the pain. I couldn't speak, so I couldn't ask anybody for any help. And so that was incredibly intense. And I couldn't talk, so I couldn't communicate. So that's what we call locked-in syndrome. And that's a terrible thing. And I'm grateful that I don't know how long that went on, but it didn't go on for too long, because there are those people who are permanently locked in and people who've been locked in for many, many years. Unfortunately, that didn't happen to me. I came out of that. And as you can see, that I'm fully mobile now. And they said to me, when I, weeks down the road or months down the road, I don't know how long it was, but I eventually began to be able to talk. And when I started to be able to talk, they began to tell me that you're paralyzed, Mr. Taylor, and you're never going to walk again. And I disputed that with them. I said, yes, I will walk. And because I was saying to them that I was going to walk, they labelled me as a difficult patient. They felt that I was an unruly patient, and because I was being difficult, they refused to give me any pain medication. So the pain that I had continued throughout the time that I was in hospital. They punished me by not letting me have any pain management. So it was a one flew over the cuckoo's nest hospital that I was in. It was a terrible, terrible hospital. The Atkinson Morley Hospital, the top neurological hospital in the country, allegedly. But it was a nightmare place for me. And it was a nightmare place for many of the patients in there, because in that hospital they were experimenting on people, doing brain surgery on them, and they didn't know what they were doing. They were experimenting on people. A lot of the patients were dying in that hospital, but they don't want you to know that. They didn't boast about it too much. They were letting people believe that they were doing cutting edge surgery, cutting edge experimentation. And I was lucky they didn't do it to me, because they'd asked my parents to sign forms so that they could do brain surgery on me, but I escaped, fortunately. They said that if they didn't do brain surgery on me, I would certainly die, but I declined the offer. And to this day I don't understand how I managed to escape the brain surgery, because my parents had signed the form, and I was 22 years old at the time. But I said to them emphatically that I didn't want to have the brain surgery done. But I was laying in that bed all the time, terrified, thinking that the choice had been taken out of my hands. So I was engaged in a fight to show them that I could pull it together, and that I could be normal and sane, and that I could recover without the surgery, which shows the power of the mind, because I was in a battle for survival. I had to pull it together, because otherwise they were going to operate on me, whether I liked it or not. But as you can see, I did overcome the paralysis. I had to, because I needed to get out of that place. And although they said I was paralyzed, and although they tried their best to stop me, they even tied me in the bed to stop me getting out of the bed, I had to get out of my bed when the staff had all gone at midnight every night, and teach myself to walk, because nobody helped me. And I walked away from that bed at midnight, eventually after 12 weeks, and I fell on my face hundreds of times. But what I can say to you is, if you fall down 9 times, you've just got to get up 10. Just keep falling down, just keep getting up, and you'll get to your destination. The only way you'll fail is if you quit, so don't quit. And that said, I think I've said enough on this video, and to close it, let me tell you, if anybody ever tells you what you can't do, don't listen, because there are some bad people out there. They'll impose their values on you, and they'll do that not because they're bad people. It's because they're your friends, and they don't want to lose you. They want to keep you down on their level, because if you rise above that level, they're going to lose you. They don't want to lose you. So don't listen to them. Set your own level and move forward. And if you ever need help moving forward, remember that I'm a hypnotist, and give me a call. If you want to call me, you can contact me by looking me up on this website, and you'll get my contact details there by going to virtualemeeting.com. That's the word virtual, the letter E, and meeting.com. And you can help me too, because I send a lot of money to the Philippines to help people in the Philippines. So all the money I earn from my clients goes to the Philippines, and that's my passion. So do use that domain, virtualemeeting.com, and you'll find all my social media is there, my Facebook, my LinkedIn, my email address, my telephone number, so you can book me for a session. That's virtualemeeting.com. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel down below here, and that will help too, and help to make this video go viral, and you'll be helping the people in the Philippines by doing that. So thank you for listening to me. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Share it with your friends, share it on your channel at Facebook, share it on your channel at YouTube, and that will help me to help people in the Philippines, and that will help me to help you. Thank you for listening, and bye bye from Keith Anthony. Bye bye for now.